Good evening and welcome to the special meeting for Monday, June 27th, 2022. Ms. Hilbrick, will you please call roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Councilman Crocker?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
Mayor Bucknight?
Here.
And Councilwoman Solis and Mayor Pro Tem Young will not be joining us this evening.
All right, if y'all please rise for the pledges, followed by a moment of silence.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Mr. Garza, do you have any announcements?
Good afternoon, evening, Mayor and council members. I have one. I'd like to introduce you to Greg Rodriguez. He is our new utility operations maintenance manager. He started in this career when he was 1 year old and has been doing it for roughly 15 years. Has worked in several plants, both water and wastewater, including those in Bay City, College Station, and Point Comfort. He joins us as certified or licensed in both water and wastewater. He will be our only employee that is that certified. And so we are extremely blessed to have him come be part of our team. This is part of our effort to beef up our utilities operation. And so he will be the lone person in that area that is responsible for literally waking up every day and just worrying about our utility system, which we need more of that. And so I want to briefly ask him to come up and just say a few words, if you don't mind, Greg. Yeah.
Hello, and good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Greg Rodriguez, and like I said, I enjoy working at the water and wastewater plants, and I look forward to getting to know everybody and working for you guys and bringing the expertise and information that I've learned over the years to better assist the city of Victoria.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And like I said, he started when he was 1. So, all right. That's all I
Any
got.
recognitions? Items from council? Nope. All right. Citizens communication? Mr. Vonderot, we're missing you. We'll close citizens communication and go into the work session.
All right. So here we are again. Felt like we were just here last year talking about the budget. But it's a good story. So we're excited to share with you our preliminary budget. Typically, we have felt in the past comfortable referring to this as a proposed budget. But as you know, technically the proposed budget happens at the very first meeting in August after this month-long or month-plus-long review of conversation with you around the budget. But because of what we've discussed in the past around the fact that we will have to make some changes to the CIP, we want to be very careful in managing expectations that this year in particular, this truly is a preliminary budget. As I alluded to last week, the numbers that you'll see tonight don't incorporate any changes to the CIP, which we all know they're going to have to change before final adoption. So keep that in mind. But nonetheless, we wanted to provide you a glimpse of where we are with the budget. And I'm super ecstatic to have all the directors present to you over the course of the next, hopefully, 2 evenings, so that you can hear some of the great things that they're doing and plan to continue to do. To kick us off, you can expect to hear a lot over my presentation around the economy and the fact that we're being sensitive to that. I don't have to repeat what you hear out on the streets, or you're all well informed, so you know what's going on. So we're being mindful of that as well. Obviously, we're required to have a balanced budget, and so we're mindful of that. I'll talk briefly about our appraisal process and the growth of our tax base, which presents an opportunity to lower our property tax rate. So that's great news. I'll spend a few minutes talking about our Phase 3 compensation pay program, which we're also very excited to be in that third phase. This has been a multi-year effort, and so we're very excited that we're continuing to invest in our employees. We're going to talk a little bit about the addition of staff. So that's a big change from this year's preliminary budget and ultimately proposed budget compared to the last couple of years, that we're going to propose increasing staff more significantly than years past. Great story on the health fund, so I'll spend a minute on that. CIP, I won't spend too much time on it other than some of the funding features, since obviously it's going to ultimately potentially change. And the removal of the Rescue Plan Act grant has had a drastic impact on our budget. Obviously, that was over 2 years, $14+ million. And so when you remove that, it obviously decreases on one side of the equation. So that's a notable change that's worth highlighting. So very quickly, or maybe not as quickly, this is a glimpse of the preliminary budget for fiscal year 23. You'll notice that it totals $176 million. If you're wondering, fiscal year 22 was $171 million. And so it is a slight increase compared to fiscal year 22. We'll obviously walk you through some of the highlights of the general fund, but this is simply just a big picture snapshot showing you that the general fund is $57 million of that 176. To the right, you'll simply see what we refer to as the budget wheel, which I'll get into more detail once I go through a more comprehensive overview of the general fund. So on the revenue side, we'll talk a little bit about revenue. So this gives you a glimpse of what we expect the revenue budget for fiscal year 23 to be compared to fiscal year 22. And now, if you're one of those that just noticed that I just said that it's a $176 million budget, but we have a $162 million revenue budget, and you're wondering, where is that $15 million coming from? Well, it comes from a combination of different things. This is where we take advantage of excess fund balance, and so we draw down fund balance in order to balance the budget. And so in this instance, we are drawing down $4 million from the general fund. We're drawing down $1.3 million from the utility fund. And we also draw down money from funds that have just had cash in them for quite a while. So as an example, the TxDOT fund, which is money that has just been collected over the years from the loop, remember that? So we are now in a position to finally actually draw down money from the TxDOT project for the Lone Tree Acres drainage project that we've been talking about for a couple years. And so we are drawing down $5 million from the TxDOT fund in order to now finally actually implement that project. And so this is normally how our budget works. And it's important that we obviously are transparent with that because there are a lot of things that play into how you balance the budget. And I'll give you a couple more examples as we go through it. But the big takeaways from what is the difference on the revenue budget side, I already alluded to the removal of the ARPA, which you see in red at the bottom. And you see an increase on the bonds. It also came up at the last meeting that we don't issue bonds every year. And next fiscal year will be one of those years where we will issue bonds, specifically an increase on the utility side, and you'll get a glimpse of that here shortly. You're going to see a lot of this same type of graph. It's very busy. So really quickly, the brownish color is representative of fiscal year 22. The orange color is fiscal year 23, and the green is the delta or the difference. And we're simply just showing you the same information in different format, whether it's the bar graph or the table. You can pick to choose which you prefer to focus on. But I'll take these one at a time. And obviously, I'll start with the most important, which is associated with taxes. But overall, there's a $5 million increase in the revenue budget compared to fiscal year 22. I'll start with sales tax. We've talked about it briefly in different settings, and it's no surprise that we are taking a conservative approach to our expected sales tax revenue next year because of what we're seeing in the economy. There's a lot of mixed reports or mixed opinions around what's going to happen over the course of the next 12 months. And so we're taking a conservative approach. Not only that, but when we look at the 12-month rolling average, though, you can see that that's trending down. And so we're being sensitive to that by taking a conservative approach. And so what we have in the preliminary budget is $17.3 million, which really isn't that big of a difference compared to where we were from a budgeted standpoint last year. Now, obviously, throughout the year, we have been performing better than what we have budgeted. But as we have always said, we're mindful of not getting too hype about that because of the impact that the stimulus funds has had on that, the impact of inflation has had on creating this potentially false sense of increased sales tax. So we're being sensitive to all of that. This is another graph that simply shows the same thing, that we are close to 17.4 in what we're proposing. Again, not a significant increase to what we budgeted in fiscal year 22, but we think taking this conservative approach will put us in a good spot. You may recall that when we hit the pandemic, it didn't impact us as much compared to other cities because we had always taken a very conservative approach. And you could see in 20 how that played out, where we actually budgeted sort of corresponding to what Gilbert at the time projected would be a recession back then, ended up being a pandemic, and it still resulted in a decrease in sales tax revenue. And so this conservative approach, and Gilbert's crystal ball is the best way to describe it, can't argue with it, you know? So you just gotta roll with it, so I'm rolling with it. And so conservative sales tax projections, here we go. On the property tax side, which of course is another component to taxes, this is a lot of information. It looks different from what you've seen before. And so I'm gonna walk you sort of through some of it. Many of you have seen a May version of this that had a total increase to the NTAV of 14%. What you see here shows an NTAV increase of just north of 12%. The difference compared to what you saw in the May version is that this actually takes more into account what's under protest. And so in what you saw in May and that I showed you at our last one-on-one meetings, showed a 16% increase on commercial valuations and a 6% increase to residential. You'll notice that the figures that are shown under fiscal year 23 for the 22 tax roll are actually less than those of 21, but that's because a lot of that is still under protest. So the way the process works is that amount that you see that almost equates to $1 billion under protest, once it goes through the process, it goes back up to its appropriate line item once it runs through that whole process, right? So we expect, just based off of past practice, that the end result of that protest exercise will result in an NTAV increase of 12%. But it's hard to really show what the numbers will look like once that process goes through. And I learned today that the number of protests under protest are double this year what they were last year. And so they're still working through that process. Any questions on that part? Okay. The other thing to point out is that under the commercial piece, we do have roughly $60 million that's coming off from a tax abatement associated with Caterpillar. And in case you're wondering, as of now, that's made up of 3.5% of the amount that's shown there. Obviously, if that amount changes, that percentage will change as well. But it's important to note that those tax abatements associated with Caterpillar are coming off the books. In fiscal year 23, we've got one of them coming off the books, and then the year after that, we have the second one coming off the books as well. And you'll also notice that we're beginning to incorporate the TERS piece into the equation to give you a sense of what the values were within the TERS from an increment standpoint and how much money potentially will go into the TERS because of setting it up. So before I go to the next slide, really quickly, as you know, the fact that we have this high of a NTAV increase allows us the opportunity to look at decreasing the tax rate, as I alluded to earlier, while also increasing our revenue to be able to continue to do what we do. And so with that said, what we're proposing is reducing the tax rate by roughly 4 cents or 6.8% to comply with SB 2, which caps us at how much money we can generate year over year. And so under this proposal, you'll see that the tax rate would go from 0.5882 to 0.5481, which is a decrease of just a little over 4 cents, or as I said, that equates to 6.8%. Once we go to the bottom of that, you'll notice the unused tax rate piece. This is important. You may recall that in the past, we have left some unused tax rate on the table. In essence, we have left money on the table because of SB 2. And so this year allows us the ability to zero that out. And so we are excited about